There's four that I asked. There's five that I asked for my partner, but they're quick to answer. Yeah. But let's get to it. Let's find out a little bit more about yourself. I know you're on the campaign trail right now. But let's get this interview started. So what's up, yo? Check it out. It's your boy DJ L7. As you know, I'm interviewing candidates from all across the nation. I've actually interviewed quite a few candidates running the 22 races, including some candidates connected to this candidate right here. But I'm gonna let him introduce himself. We're gonna get into all of that. Go ahead. Why don't you introduce yourself to my audience?
I'm Thomas Daniel Quater. I run as a libertarian because the other two the two main parties don't lend themselves to my beliefs. Um, Maybe partially, but not entirely. I actually began my run. Oh wow! So I got involved with the Libertarian Party just through online messaging around 2016. I'm a disabilities advocate, so I'm always looking for organizations and groups who listen to what I have to say and appreciate what I have to say. The interesting thing is that Democrats and Republicans never respond. um, and when I got talking about the restrictions on welfare and how that harms people with disabilities, how it keeps them from finding upward mobility, keeps them from getting off of welfare, um, I was listened to. And then I really dove in. Um, I ended up running for state senate in 2020 against a Republican who is now running for sheriff, and he's flying the black and gold of my party on his campaign signs. Isn't that interesting?
Well, it happens, right? So
Yeah.
maybe he saw something that resonated, right? So he decided to jump on.
Well, he's not on the party line.
Well, then maybe he's just trying to blend in, like a chameleon. Who knows, right?
I think it's largely because the majority of the votes that I took were from the county he's running in.
Well, who knows, right? Yeah, that's pretty wild. So you've been the thing is that look, I'll be honest with you, right? Yeah. Usually people don't associate libertarians and people with disabilities rights advocates together. In fact, a lot of times these things are seen as kind of like polar opposites. Would you say that that's kind of a possibility?
I would say that welfare has become a misnomer and it's a polar opposite of what people think it is. Um,
Sure, maybe you
so
could outline that for us.
there's a wide range of libertarian perspectives, and you'll hear taxation is theft and welfare now, but those of us who are more grounded in reality and actually want to take steps to make change. Activists use that hard messaging to try and get people to think about it. And politicians like myself have to have policy that backs it up. We need to talk about how we can improve people's lives. Now, how do you improve the life of someone with disabilities? Do you just hand them more money and keep those restrictions? Because that's not going to work, especially when you look at the inflation going on now. Um, you consider that being disabled and on welfare means that your health care is also welfare, and that comes with its own restrictions. So after I got involved online, I spent about a 5 year stint largely stuck in my apartment, the same one you see behind me, because the wheelchair that I had was in disrepair. They're a machine. If you use them, they wear and they need upkeep. You don't really get that very well where I am through the systems. I'm overinsured. I have Medicaid, Medicare, and private insurance through a parent that I am um, technically still covered by. I am listed as a dependent. Um, I it's funny because I help everybody else far more than I'm usually helped. I'm a voluntarist. I've always been volunteering since I was a child, and yet it's always seen that I'm the one that needs help, and largely that's because of the restrictions. So what happened was, um, I had had the same model wheelchair over and over since I was 15. 5 years ago, I was 34. I had gone through about 2 years of fighting the system, over 20 appointments to justify this wheelchair. And the minute I won that battle and got approved to have this wheelchair, because nobody was getting approved for these wheelchairs, the company making the line stopped making the line. So I got approved for a wheelchair that was no longer available right at the same moment. Now, here's the thing. People tend to think that a wheelchair is a wheelchair is a wheelchair. But I have a very specific condition, right? And most people do. I require a custom power wheelchair. And the largest thing about that for me is suspension. I have brittle bones disease or osteogenesis imperfecta. And what I learned going through that process was that the doctor-based justification for what you need in a wheelchair or any other mobility equipment is no longer there. They have preset categories, and that's where you land, and that's all you have to choose from. And so what they did was they came back and gave me a range of wheelchairs to choose from. I'm very familiar with my condition for obvious reasons. And it's very apparent to me that ending up in one of those wheelchairs would lead to injury within a few months. The kind of injury that would put me to the bed. And if you know what it means to be put to the bed, that means you're not going to get out. That's a slow, horrible fate that, as a disabilities advocate, I'm very familiar with. I started doing two things with whatever little bit of money I had. Having some parts remade, having some parts purchased used to keep up the wheelchair I had. It was failing miserably. It was still kind of going, but really only around the apartment, not outside or anywhere else. And the interesting thing about those justifications I was just talking about, the ability to get over the threshold of your door and leave your home is no longer a justification for a better power wheelchair. What are you supposed to do if there's a house fire? Most people need their communities. They need to see people on a regular basis. We're a social animal, if you will. We like hugs. We like to participate in groups. And if you're stuck in your home, you can't do that. It's unfortunately psychologically similar to solitary confinement. And, we get an uproar when we hear that a prisoner was in solitary confinement for 30 days. Well, some of us are in it for 30 years, right in our own homes. And a pretty prison is still a prison, no matter how pretty it is. And I want to talk about libertarianism and why, from my perspective, did that appeal to me? Voluntary action, right? Voluntarism, crowdfunding, community supports. These are things that have always helped me when the system failed my entire life. I'm from a small community. We all know each other. Businesses became accessible because they saw me, not because I called any code enforcement or complained or even said anything. And that's the way a community should work. The libertarians that I got involved with crowdfunded the exact wheelchair I needed. It was used, very lightly used. And from starting the fundraiser to receiving the chair and modifying the seat for my needs took 2 months. To get a wheelchair through the systems at the level that I've needed it for customization has never taken less than about 2 years. So voluntary action was able to do that in 2 months instead of 2 years. I'm sitting in that wheelchair right now. Since then, I now have 4 of these wheelchairs. People have just decided to help me. And at a very minimal cost comparatively to what it is to the systems. And I can talk about that cost. There's a lot of regulatory overhead, middlemen are placed in your way. There are so many companies and people between you and what you need. That's why it takes so much time, and that's why it costs so much. The cushion I'm sitting on is very specific. It's super custom. It's a rectangle. It's a square rectangle, square corners. It's a certain kind of foam that gives you a little bit of give. It's traded to be antimicrobial so that you can prevent bed sores and the like, which is a big problem. The material covering it, similarly, it sheds liquid and yet lets vapor breathe so that you stay dry. That prevents bed sores and sepsis. Now, that cushion through the systems, I've never seen a bill come in for less than $1,200. I source those materials direct from the companies, the same materials in the same companies, and had a family member who can sew put the cover together or not. That price went from $1,200 to $30.
A lot of the money that's being dedicated towards the solutions are really being robbed by a lot of these contractors and BS. It's disgusting.
And bureaucratic overhead, right? I'm very familiar with the plight of social workers. My heart aches for them every day.
I think Larry Sharp makes a very similar, approach as in terms of he also has a similar way of taking care of the social needs that people have that they don't associate with libertarianism, right? So, do you guys maybe kind of working together on this one, kind of, or you just
Larry and I have been working together since 2020.
Yeah, I've seen some footage. Yeah, that was cool. So, but this seems very similar. That's pretty cool, man. All right. So, damn it. I have some other questions. So the thing is that I think you said earlier, said that you were standing for against vaccine mandates. Am I correct?
Mandates, yes. Vaccines, no.
Okay.
I'm against all healthcare mandates, any
Right.
healthcare mandates. The wheelchair issue is a healthcare mandate.
So if we look at the Medical Freedom Party, right? I don't think they have anybody running for New York State Senate. Is there any chance that they might endorse your campaign, or maybe you guys could run a diffusion ticket or something?
Potentially, I'm not too worried about it.
Okay,
I prefer to run as I am.
I understand.
If other people want to agree with me and they like me, they're welcome to reach out to me. But you see these political games going on all the time, and it's to me it's a bit of a misnomer when you say this so and so was endorsed by so and so and endorsed by so and so, particularly with parties in New York and fusion voting. A lot of the third parties are shell structures that harvest money. Basically, you're buying that line,
Yeah.
and it goes to specific individuals or benefits them in one way or another. Politics gets very dirty that way. And I don't want to be one of those people. So if somebody wants to support me, fine, but I'm not going to pay them.
That's cool. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, I feel you. Good to know, man. Good to know. All right. So, look, I know that this. Oh, before I get into the other questions, just a quick question, just for myself. By the way, I want to shout out my man Mark Zafman. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's working on. We just started a website called Deaf Blind Inclusion. I know that might not include your issues, but what are I know you said the wheelchair, right? The osteogenic and perfected. There might be other things that people might not think of normally when they provide like wheelchairs to people who might be sitting in museums, stuff like that, right? Who are getting wheelchairs and stuff like that. What are some of the, I know you talked about the cushion, right? The 30 versus $1,200. That was a crazy story. But what are some of the other things that people might not think about providing with like I know some wheelchairs don't have anything for your feet, right? Don't have any place for your feet to rest. Some of them do. What are some of the other things that custom wheelchairs really need, especially for osteogenesis imperfecta?
Well, for osteogenesis imperfecta, it's really about the suspension and the cushion and tilt and recline so that the seat can come up. You get the weight off your underside. And I do that 2 or 3 times a day for about 10 minutes, and it just really prevents the pressure sores that happen on your skin. Um, that's a growing cause of death in the last 10 years. We had a handle on it in the 70s. Another disabilities advocate who is also disabled, William Peace, Peace. His handle for his blog was Bad Cripple. And why was it bad cripple? Because he recognized that when he talked about the issues from his perspective, people thought he was a bad person. Right? In the last 3 days, I have been called a leftist, a Nazi, and what was the other one? I forget, but 3 bad names or a negative meaning, right? They intended it negatively. I don't necessarily think of leftist as bad because an individual is left is not necessarily realizing all the problems with the systems that they support. But I got called 3 bad names. Why did I get? Oh, crackpot. That was the other one. I got called a crackpot. That was fun. Do you know why I got called those names?
You disagree with them? I don't know. You weren't in the echo chamber?
Because I advocate for removing restrictions in welfare, specifically for those with disabilities, and allowing them to find some upward mobility. I believe that having a disability doesn't mean you shouldn't have a purpose in life. I believe that having a disability doesn't mean you shouldn't have access to your community or the amenities you need in your home. And there are a swath of government restrictions on all of that. If you need to modify your home to be accessible because you suddenly sustain a disability, you gain one, then there are a lot of things in the way. Permits are one of them.
You know, a lot if people listen more to the actual people with disabilities, right, on the end of these services rather than the managers of these, you know, not-for-profit organizations or these political and media aristocracy that are always telling us, you know, how they're doing such a great job. You're absolutely right. There's it's not just people with disabilities. Oh, they're a huge community that suffers from this. Public housing,
It's
homeless
any
shelters.
demographic.
Yeah,
Any demographic.
some people have had some experience with this and are very sympathetic to the things that you're talking about. I would think that a majority of Americans. So you could have a sleeper hit if the press or the media wants to get whatever cover your campaign, which they surely will not. You know what I mean? Talking about some things that they're not covering also. The ballot. You guys got kicked off the ballot. What the crap is that, bro?
So that's interesting. So previously, Andrew Cuomo had tried to pass a ballot access bill that would make it harder through executive order. He got slapped down. He tried to pass it through the state legislature. They got slapped down. So he passed it in the 2020 budget. And that took the requirement for a third party or an independent candidate from 15,000 signatures in 12 weeks to 45,000 in 6 weeks. Triple the number, half the time. And he was actually after a different third party, the Working Families Party. He was mad at them because they endorsed somebody else. You see how dirty that gets when it comes to endorsing? That's why I don't like to play those games. And, you know, we came darn close. We hit a little over 43,000. The interesting thing about this is if nobody complains about that, we'd still have the line. The BOE doesn't, the Board of Elections does not actually make that decision on face value, right? If it appears to be legitimate, they just file it and you're on. It happens all the time. Other candidates from even from the major parties have gotten on a line with insignificant numbers because nobody complained. Now I want to interject Lee Zeldin into this scenario.
Something happens.
Yes, he went for a third line as well. And his team, you can't say him because candidates always disconnect themselves from the dirty stuff, right? You know,
Was it me?
photocopied 10,000 signatures to make that line. And we discovered it. And of course, we enforced back because he had somebody that's linked to him. And of course, I can't prove that. I probably shouldn't even say that now, but I know it for a fact. And I'm going to tell you that Lee Zeldin enforced Andrew Cuomo's law. And we wonder why things don't work so well. It's insane. It's insanity. Now, what is one of the major mottos of our nation here in the United States of America? Not America. That's two continents. By the way, there are many countries. The United States of America, for the people, by the people. You're supposed to be able to run for office.
Absolutely.
You're supposed to be able to have that say.
Talking about having that say, right? Yeah, between the duopoly and their little games and stuff. I think there's also someone else running for Senate. I think her name's Diane Sayre. You've heard of her, right?
I have heard of her.
Would you guys be willing to have a debate on my channel? Maybe.
Possibly.
Maybe yeah, like why not? And invite the Democrats and Republicans too. But if they don't show up, you know, I mean, well, who's running? Lee Zeldin's running for Senate.
Lee Zeldin is running for governor.
Who's running for Senate for the Republicans?
I'd have to look it up because he's not doing much. See, the interesting thing about New York is that Republicans haven't won a statewide race in over 20 years. And they use the line to grow their war chest and run for higher office.
Yeah.
They don't actually do the work. You'll see commercials, you'll see mailers, You'll see newspaper articles.
Yeah, I don't see
Anybody
him on the streets though.
right. In 2020, I didn't see my opponent, who was a Republican, on the streets at all. He was pushing vaccine mandates as a Republican. He was um, pushing all the mandates, actually. He's pretty well known for being buddy buddy with the former governor. Now, I did the opposite, right? With broken bones at times. But we spent a good 5 months getting up at 5, out the door by 7 in the morning, not back until 7, 9, or 10 at night, and then getting up and doing it again. And that's because we went to every single community in the district, which is 3 counties or better. It incorporates 4 counties, but there's 2 whole counties, a half a county, and a piece of a county. That's a lot of communities. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of dedication. It's a lot of people that you meet and you talk to. And that's important. If you're going to run for office, you have to meet people and talk to them. My greatest experience in this campaign was actually my first time in New York City. I've lived in New York my entire life, and I've never been able to get to New York City. But for petitioning, I went down there for a few weeks, and I learned an awful lot about New York City. We have a divide here in New York that shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be. We like to upstate people. We like to rail against New York City and say they're the problem. The city government is the problem, but the people are not. Uh, we fail to realize that many of the local positions that we elect directly here in upstate New York are only appointed in New York City. No election. There aren't school boards that are elected in New York City.
Yeah, there's a lot of local stuff. Yeah.
Now, how can they have the mindset of for the people by the people if the only people they get to elect are the highest offices that are so disconnected from them?
Well, they might pull off something locally. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, who knows? I think they won something in Queens a while ago, but not statewide. But we'll see. Yeah, so we'll. You bring up a good point though. Yeah, there are people who just treat the Republicans as a default reform party or a default like protest party, right? Because they're so just so they can access the ballot system and things like that, right? Which they
But we
play
have a
games with.
big we have a big rhino and dino problem in New York. Republican in name only,
Yeah,
Democrat in name only, and it's interesting that you end up with this messaging, this political messaging. I like to call it a Burger King commercial. You see the commercial. It's this big, beautiful, juicy patty, vegetables full of color. Every sesame seed is pressed or is placed precisely on the top of that fluffy bun, and then you go to Burger King and you come out through the drive-through, and what do you have? Right? It's not that. It's definitely not as good as what you thought. It's false advertising, what it is. And I see that with the Democratic Party. I see that with the Republican Party, and the one thing I can say about the Libertarian Party is that we have yet to win enough to actually make those same mistakes. So if you want to choose the lesser of 2 evils, well, maybe you have to consider the lesser of 3 evils. And I'm more than just the Libertarian Party. I support more than just the Libertarian Party as a third party. If you're out there and you're in a third party, you like a third party, or maybe you want to create a new party. Germany has 6 nationally known parties.
yeah,
Perhaps we should go that way because consensus works better. If we have more groups of people represented more properly,
yeah. The
then
Libertarian Party itself may be factionalizing off.
yes.
You know about the Karen Iron Harlow situation and the other stuff. Yeah, so it's pretty exciting. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but there is factionalization happening. Yeah,
Yeah, so factioning is not new to the Libertarian Party or any other party.
yeah,
Democratic Party has been factioned for decades. Same with the Republican Party. The factions change, they come and they go. I remain as true a libertarian as I can and out of the fray. The factions in the LP right now will sort themselves out because people who do bad jobs will fail and people who do good jobs will succeed. And the other issue with our party is that we are so open to consensus that it leaves us vulnerable to things like takeovers.
okay.
But I would rather be the good guy that gets beat up than the bad guy whatsoever in any way.
all choices, yeah. So look, also another crew that I rock with, by the way, I have the Libertarian sticker right here. I don't know if you saw, right? Yeah, I am a card-carrying member of
Nice.
Libertarians, just so you know. But what about Tulsi recently made something about leaving the Democratic Party, going independent. What's your thoughts on that whole situation?
She was the best candidate the Democrats had for president, in my opinion, and they all just screwed her over. You see this in both of these parties, right? I was at a kind of BLM-esque rally right after the election in 2020, and an African American took the stage and the microphone and said, "Well, we got Joe Biden, another Republican. Yay!" They actually used that tone of voice, the sarcasm. Um, I mean, we're all probably familiar with his 94 crime bill and the vice president's enforcing of it and putting a lot of marginalized peoples in prison for cannabis and stupid offenses. That a lot of them shouldn't be offenses, right? Victimless crimes are not crimes. No victim, no crime. Uh, now, why would we? Why would we keep supporting so many people who are two-faced? Right? I mean, if they can't uphold the principles of their own party, why are the parties leading them to the front? It has nothing to do with principles. It has nothing to do with laws or thoughts or ideas. It has more to do with money.
Yeah, all these careerists are in here, and they're not just in the politics; they're also in the media as well. They're all
Yep.
playing a corrupt little freaking, aristocracy game. It's disgusting. Yeah.
You could remove the salary from a higher level politician, and it would still be worth it to them to do whatever it took to hold on to that seat because the lifestyle they're afforded alone is worth so much.
If you look at Schumer, right? Yeah, you can look up his tax returns. They're available online. You see that he makes more money from other things than his actual right on his taxes than actual his Senate job. Being the minority leader is majority leader is his side hustle.
People
Being a senator
forget
is his side hustle. Yeah.
people forget what we used to pay these people. Do you know what they would get in say the 1800s?
They should get 50,000, like today's money. You know what I mean? Max, like,
Most of them started by getting a stipend and cover
yeah.
lodging, food, and travel, and
Oh,
that's it.
that's it. Oh, that sounds fair to me too. Yeah, yeah.
But you had to have an income outside of it, and which meant you had to do it for the right reasons.
You have to be a regular person.
Yep.
Yeah, sounds good to me, man. All right, so look, I have some other partners that I work with, and I'd like to ask about some of their issues. So first of all, do you support the freedom of Julian Assange?
Absolutely.
Cool, appreciate that. Yeah. Next one that I work with is used to be have some association with the Yang Gang. It's funny now, right? Actually, Yang isn't promoting UBI anymore, but I'm still been asking many candidates about this particular idea. Would you support UBI? I'm not mad at that. Yeah, I'm not mad at any answer.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so this is another thing where the concept is great and the
Yeah.
reality isn't so great.
Good that you realize that. I mean,
Do
yeah,
you
that's what we were talking
remember?
about earlier. Yeah,
Do you
absolutely.
remember Milton Friedman's NIT, very similar to UBI,
What's that called again?
negative income tax?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that someone that we know is promoting that one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, so Milton Friedman, I believe, actually gained some traction, and that was moving through the channels to get passed, and he ended up squashing it himself.
Oh really?
Do you know what pork
I don't
barreling
know
is?
that. What's that again? I forgot. People
Pork
feed the money to
barreling
their own
is
constituents.
when so if you've got a bill in
Sheesh.
Congress, like let's keep it very simple. The bill in Congress is to purchase milk, and in order to get it passed, you have to tack on extra expenditures for somebody else to purchase flowers, right? And then somebody else wants to purchase napkins, whatever it is, right? And,
Yeah.
and then your original concept, right, ends up costing 10 or 100 times what it should and not actually being able to do the job. You end up with very little milk
Yeah.
and a lot of stuff that you don't need. And that lands on the taxpayer.
Yeah. And the napkin maker's making all the money. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
he wasn't even like nobody asked for more napkins. Exactly. Trying to
So
get milk.
my opinion is that bills should remain true, meaning if you're passing a bill for cannabis, that's all that should be in there.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Wish that people more reason, but everybody thinks there's some grand schemer pulling off some kind of shenanigans. Yeah, possibly. All right. So what about so the UBI, right? Actually, once again, right? I do actually, we've been telling a lot of people that I work with in the UBI field. Y'all, just because it's an idea, the name, they think it's like a magical solution. It's not. You know what I mean? It could be good. It could be bad. You have to do
Mhm.
it the right way. The implementation is very key. Don't start getting all hopped up on one. Think it's a magic solution. It's really not.
The
Many
devil is
times,
always in the details.
yeah, they weaponize these things against us, and actually, it goes to serve some other need than what it was intended for. But because they got what they think they won, you didn't win nothing. Yeah, you won yourself a bunch of unnecessary napkins. And basically, yeah, that's a good one. All right, so another one that I work with is actually the disabilities unit, and something I'm going to tell you that one thing I'm working on is this is weird for the libertarians though, so we'll see how you take this one. The thing is that
Very well accepted in libertarians when I talk about
okay,
disability.
so one of the things that if we take a look at these disability people, one thing is that if we look at minimum wage, it's kind of like a subsistence wage, barely meet like some kind of costs. And if we look at people with minimum with disabilities, they're allowed to be paid sub minimum wage. Now the thing is that right, we might say that it might take federal subsidies, right? If there's less productivity or something, who knows? But would you have, right? I'm not saying that any particular way has to be sort of subsidies or not, right? It could be maybe some other way. But would you support at least minimum wage for people with disabilities?
So the first thing I would support is abolishing sub-minimum wage. Texas already did this. New York has not. When
Okay.
Rhode Island did it, the unemployment rate for those with disabilities was dramatically improved. Um, this is a state by state issue,
Okay.
and we need to realize what sub-minimum wage means for people with disabilities in particular. That means the business purchases a permit from the government that allows them to pay people less if they have a disability. And the reasoning for paying them less is so that they don't lose their benefits. So here's the thing: if you do work, you want benefit from that, correct?
Yes.
And if someone who's disabled does work, they don't actually benefit because, in some way or form, or at least they don't benefit as much as they should, it's removed from what they get in services, specifically if it's an SSI check. And the justification for sub minimum wage is so that you can keep your services. And here's the thing: if you're keeping your services, why would you work? Why would you do that? And if you're working, what's the incentive to move up, to learn more, to do more, to find a better position when you're only getting paid $1 an hour? Um, there's a simple solution here: remove that restriction, right? That this is a one for one restriction. Make a dollar, lose $1. Sometimes it's make a dollar, lose 80 cents, whatever it is. That's still pretty direct restriction. How about, until you can afford your own health insurance and live relatively comfortably, as most of us expect, we just don't remove any of that money. You can work however you want. I mean, do you think it's fair? Pick any other group of people to sell a business a permit to pay them less. And that's in the principle of it. Um, I definitely agree with helping those who need it. My biggest problems come with the bureaucracy of the system. I was talking about social workers earlier. They get to know the person with a problem. They get to know very intimately the pain and the struggles and the needs, and they go file the paperwork and they wait 6 months. And they're usually taking phone calls from that person over and over again because I want to know what's going on, right? That's their job. And the state comes back to the social worker and says, well, you're not allowed to help them, right? Now, this is someone they've befriended, they know, and they have to go back to that person and say, I can't help you. Can you imagine being that person, that social worker?
It's well, sometimes they get too comfortable saying that again and again. They do that every day. It becomes a habit, and they get used to. It gets pretty brutal, and I've been on the receiving end of that. I didn't like it at all, man. At all.
The other thing is the regulatory burden that gets in the way of social workers. They often don't know what's available or what they're allowed to do. I was dealing with a gentleman in 2020 who needed a device to measure his blood sugar, and his own social workers failed to help him get through it. One phone call, me, a phone call. I know more about that than they do. Think about that. It's because they're overloaded. Their caseload is usually way too high,
Yeah.
even though there's restrictions on that. the requirements for visitation is ridiculous. 16 times a year, I have to prove I'm still disabled. Last year, New York State spent a significant number of months trying to prove that the genetic condition they recognize I was born with still affected me between the ages of 18 and 22, because it just magically went away and came back. Suddenly I was a whole ambulatory person with no problems for 4 years. And then it suddenly came back. I don't know what kind of magic they think happens in the world, but doesn't that seem insane for people to be working to find that out when it's very obvious?
They have they're trying to deliver some results that are sent from the top, not that have no interest in reality. They have their own financial and political reasons to achieve these goals that have nothing to do with servicing you.
Right. And then
Yeah.
so the other thing they do is you just hit the nail on the head. They're servicing you, right? The numbers that they tend to use to justify what they do is how many people they've serviced. How many people have they served? Well, they could talk to you, but not help you, and you're still a person they served.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, someone paid for some time for someone to talk to you when the person getting paid, and those were service hours, and there you go. Doesn't matter if they solved your problem or not, or if they even made it worse, right? It's just there's no accountability. It's quite sad. Yeah. So I appreciate people like yourself stepping up and running in the race and willing to actually put some pressure on people, because if people like you weren't putting pressure on in the electoral system, then people would have to find another way and really we need you to like learn the whole system and help carry it through. And I really appreciate that for real.
I appreciate your appreciation, because things like this show we're doing today, and anytime I'm speaking in public, anytime there's people around, when I can communicate these ideas and these concepts and make people realize that welfare is a misnomer today. And it doesn't matter what group of welfare you're talking about. This applies to single moms. This applies to generational welfare in inner cities. Welfare is a misnomer. It is not for your wellness anymore. It is to keep you in place.
They call it welfare trap. There's a lot of discussion about that. One day, actually, I should have an episode on that. I actually make a note to myself right now. That will definitely be coming up. Okay. Uh, yeah. What do we call that again? The welfare trap. That's actually an interesting episode right there. Yeah.
I actually call it a welfare gap,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
there's this huge gap between what you get on welfare, which usually includes your health care. Now, that's a really big part of it right now, and what you need to make to replace it. And you can lose that welfare before you're at the point of making. Actually, you will lose your welfare before you're at the point of making enough to replace it. How is that going to get people off of welfare?
Well, there's different theories, right? Yeah. So yeah,
And so, no, just toughen up, Tom. Go die. That way you're off of welfare. That's what it sounds like to me.
we definitely get treated like that sometimes. That's definitely something that they will
To
treat.
to a single mother, right? Let's say a single mom with 3 kids. Maybe dad died or left or whatever the situation is. Um, if she takes those steps, I mean, you can't just start right out into a $300,000 a year job, right? People don't do that. You have to step out and start working. Um, if a mother with children is on welfare to support her children tries to do that, she runs the risk of not having enough, having the circumstances at home decline, and CPS taking her children. Would you give up your children to get off of welfare? Most people won't.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. So unfortunate. Yeah, there's a lot of people ducking the system in a lot of ways because the system asks a lot of messed up things. And
So in 2020, I
lives,
actually had
yeah.
a conversation. In 2020, I had a conversation with a former welfare fraud investigator for New York. We started talking, and he started telling me why he left his job. And I mean, he turned ashen gray, right? You could tell it emotionally upset him. And his statement was, I got sick of hurting people who needed help over paperwork.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen those kind of things. Yeah, it's disgusting. Yeah. But, people are actually in the health field. I'm sure you've seen it as well. If you spend time in hospitals, you can't not see it, right? So sad. Anyways, let's move on to some more some more of my partners. Just want to make sure that I cover all their issues. So another one is the trans community. Now the thing is that people who are trans, they face a lot of discrimination in their life. I get it, they're different. Not saying I approve of that, but that it happens. They may find themselves difficult to find a job, and they may find themselves needing public housing. So I'm gonna present to you an example. Let's suppose that these are all made up numbers, by the way, hypothetical. Let's suppose that 10% of the people applying for housing are trans, but we see that only 1% of people in public housing are actually trans. So we say, there's a discrepancy there. Let's go ask them what's going on. We go ask them. They say their thing. They say we're getting beat up, we're getting discriminated against. Then the news says another thing, right? The experts say another thing. We're getting all this different feedback. We're trying to figure it out, right? Now, there's no law that says you're allowed to discriminate against trans people in public housing, right? In fact, there are laws that say you shouldn't. But you see that it happening, or there seems to be data suggesting it's happening. What can you do to help assure people who are trans or other likewise minorities who are discriminated against fair access to public housing?
Oh, okay. So from my perspective of a disabilities advocate, I don't care who you are, I would advise that you try to find anything but public housing.
Okay.
Well, because in the disability community, it leads to abuse.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I work with a lot of people in public housing.
So it depends on where you are, right? Not all public housing in every place is the same.
Yeah.
But in New York, in some places, grandma, someone like myself is disabled, and the pedophile who was just released will be housed right next to each other.
Okay.
They all have human rights, in my opinion.
Okay.
But that's a dangerous situation. The quality does tend to decline faster than other means of housing the minute anything happens. And again, you get locked into this welfare trap situation. You're afraid to lose what you get if you don't try for more. Now, that same person I was talking about with the medical device, he got an off the books job. Ooh, scary, right? That's so illegal. To help get his own device. At one point, someone turned him in and almost had him kicked out of public housing. Now, I'm not anti-public housing, but if we're going to do public housing, I would prefer to be improved. And when it comes to trans issues, I am appalled, completely 100% appalled at any form of discrimination against anybody in any walk of life, whether it's public housing or just between you and me, right?
Okay.
What can we do to fix that?
Yeah.
Well, that's got to be cultural. That's got to be social. I don't know as if government can really force that, because we see this when the government tries to force something, there's a guaranteed retaliation. If you've ever dealt with a group of children, you learn quickly that showing them the way works more effectively than telling them the way. Because in our population and in the way humans are, a significant portion of people will rebel against what they're told.
I've actually asked, over 70 candidates this exact question, and that's actually generally the question. That answer about the social change, I think, is the most fulfilling answer for me. So it makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate candidates that could give that answer. I agree with that. Yeah, I like that. It's my favorite, to tell you the truth. Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the last issue that I have with my partners. I don't know if there was something called right to repair. Would you support the right to repair?
Okay, so I'm actually working on a nonprofit to get around the right to repair for wheelchairs.
Cool. Okay, so I guess that's a yes.
That's an absolute yes. So if I can put the disability spin on it, it's just what I'm good at.
Absolutely.
Where I am, rural New York, right? First, you have to get your repair approved. Then they have to find your provider or the people who will service it. And you have to hope that they have somebody who's actually knowledgeable with the model of whatever it is you need repaired. And then you have to wait for them to order the parts. And then you have to wait for them to schedule an appointment. And then you have to hope that when they come to repair it, they actually know how to do it. And it can take months and months and months. I grew up being threatened by insurance companies and the manufacturers as well as providers. If you touch it with a screwdriver, you'll void your warranty. I don't think that's quite so much the thing anymore, but it's terrible. Medical equipment in particular, these corporations are chasing intellectual property law hardcore. This is no more, I wrote a book and nobody else should profit from it. This is, I did something good for humanity, and I don't want those humans to be able to keep it in a working order, because then I can sell them another one.
Exactly. It's disgusting. They're trying to make you update the thing. What are you gonna do? Buy a wheelchair every 2 years? That's how they'd like it. You know, what I mean, pretty soon that's where it's gonna
That's
go.
that's actually already there sometimes.
Yeah.
In New York right now, uh, they're not required to repair your wheelchair if it's over 5 years old, but they are required to give you another one.
So there's a lot of unnecessary spending going on straight up.
And a lot of it has to do with a lot of these multi-corporational conglomerates, whether it's medical equipment, pharmaceuticals, insurance. They're all investing in each other, and they're all investing in politicians.
Yeah, that's the truth, and I appreciate that. Yeah, that's wild. All right, so those are my partners. I'm going to ask you some more general questions just about some of just the topics that are at large today. One of them is criminal justice reform. We see a lot of people, cops this, defund that. You know what I mean? Who knows, right? What's your take on, right? Is crime rate rising? Who knows? Yeah, what's your take on the whole criminal justice reform thing?
Okay, so one, there will always be crimes. We'll never stop that. Two, it's not the police's job to prevent crime. It's their job to respond to crime. Arguably, the response, if it's applicable, will help prevent it just by the cultural effect. However, why do we have bail? Do you know?
Bail?
Yeah.
Because the thing is that they're supposedly the person is to discourage them from trying to run away before the court hearing.
So if someone who didn't commit an egregious, harmful act upon another person wants to move to another country, do you care?
Um, I mean, depends on what hurting is, how you
I said if
define
they
that, right?
didn't, they did not. Right. So
Probably.
if
I mean, if it's like, what's that guy, like Bernie Madoff a billion. I mean, that's hurting people, I guess, right? So you're not like physically hurting them, but I mean, nah, if you're just like smoking weed, like go ahead, bro. You know what I mean? Like that's not a crime. You know what I mean?
right.
Yeah.
So when it comes to bail, we need to remember that judges have the ability to remand people without bail.
Yeah.
All bail does is ensure that rich people can commit crime.
Kind of. Yeah.
But I mean,
Walk out. Yeah.
if you don't care about the money that you put up for bail, you can still escape. Flight risk is a new argument about bail. Um, I'm seeing all of these advertisements about how bail reform releases violent criminals onto the streets. No, judges who don't do their jobs release violent criminals onto the streets, because if someone is arguably detriment or harmful to themselves or others, they can be remanded without bail until processed. If you harmed someone physically, or in Bernie Madoff's, egregiously, I mean, that was a huge thing. Um, Perhaps remanding them without bail is the thing to do.
Yeah. Anything but accountability from the people in charge. Anything but that, right? Yeah. Anything but that. That sounds. I like your answer. That's pretty cool. Yeah. All right. One of the other things is the education, right? There's a lot of people. There's different things. Debt relief. Some people are talking about like personally, I think the high price of education is absolutely insane and completely uncalled for. I don't think anybody's talking about that, but then you have people talking about like charter schools versus. There's a lot of discussions happening in that realm. What's your thoughts on education reform?
Well, I would pose a question. Why would we want to restrain any means of education whatsoever, ever, in any way? Education is good. We all understand that. If people want to homeschool, that needs to be allowed. If people want to start a charter school, that needs to be allowed. If people want private schools, that needs to be allowed. And I would argue that if you want public schools, that also needs to be allowed. But my problem with the public school system is, as you said, it costs too much. And I can kind of give an example as why.
Yeah.
Do you know the term grant harvesting?
Why don't you tell me more about it?
So grant harvesting is when an individual or an institution or a school can apply for government money for a purpose. Right? I was a purpose for grant harvesting when I was in school. I got an awful lot of money to serve my needs. Do you know what they didn't do?
Take care of your needs.
They didn't serve my needs well. Um,
A lot of jobs and trips and shit. Bullshit.
Actually, most of that grant harvesting in the public education system goes towards funding raises for administrative staff, because that helps people with disabilities or people who have trouble learning or people who have a bad whatever it is, right? There needs to be a cap. I'm sorry, but if the taxpayers are paying it, there needs to be a cap on administrative raises in some way. Maybe not a specific dollar amount, but maybe a comparative cap to the general community.
Yeah. And transparency, right? Yeah, absolutely. That's a good call, man. There's so much crooked stuff. Yo, the city agencies, it's a nightmare, man. You're absolutely right, man. If you have more investigation, I'll be investigating that. Probably gonna get blackballed everywhere. I don't give a damn. You know what I mean? I'm right. It sounds like it's gonna be a fun trip, man. I'm right.
Even,
I like the
even
libertarians.
those
Yeah.
even those investigations tend to be a waste of money, and they're only there to prop up the law profession, arguably.
Yeah, it happens, man. It's crazy. Yeah. All right. So look, we have that. Now let's take a look at the area of economic reform. Inflation's going up. People are concerned. You know what I mean? It seems wild, right? Crypto's crashing. What's I see you say some stuff about decentralizing crypto on your website. Interesting. Right? I agree with that too, but it's also like, leaning towards NFTs and possible rug pulls. What's your take on this whole situation?
Oh wow. Well, I think the number one way to combat inflation is to stop going to war for things that are not pertinent to the people in this country.
Appreciate that. Yeah, they're spending billions, like mad, stupid amount of money.
Another way to curb that is to stop bailing out failing industry.
Such
If a
as,
company is failing, it's supposed to fail.
that's right.
And the reason it's supposed to fail is because times have changed, concepts have changed, technology has changed. And when I compare this to a forest a lot, because I grew up rural and I understand nature very well, when the old wood in a forest gets too old, what happens?
Fire.
It falls. And when it falls, it creates a little clearing, more sunlight comes down the bottom, and all kinds of new growth comes up, and you've got more trees. So in business, particularly if we're talking corporate bailouts, I mean, you can look at the airline industry, the automobile industry, the energy industry, stock market. Why are we bailing out the stock market? What we need is failure. Failure is not bad. Failure is a learned lesson, and we should stop getting in the way of humanity learning those lessons.
Yeah. But the senators can't do it because they're doing insider trading. So if they let the stock market go down, their piggy bank, their magic multiplication machine gets turned off. Oh, not that. No.
And stimulus, as we saw, that's terrible for our inflation. But what people fail to realize, because they think, oh, they gave all that money to the people, oh yay, stimulus. No, 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 they gave, what was it, 98, 99% of that money, shifted it from the bottom to the top.
Yeah, it's quite disturbing.
And which parties are responsible for those stimulus? Republicans and Democrats. Trump did it first, and then Biden.
Oh yeah, and the economics shut them down for to play electoral games. You know, I mean, there's a lot of games and shit going on. It's not funny. It's not intelligent. It's really kind of sad. Yeah. So
It's a very sad Burger King commercials.
yeah. All right. So we're getting towards the end of the topics here, but actually, it's a good one to kind of like get towards the end here. The electoral reform, right? Yeah. The thing is that does the fact that they hit you guys in the state here, does that impact the Libertarians' ability to get on the national ballot?
Yeah, it will come 24.
Okay, so are you guys going to be on the national ballot?
That's up for debate. The party itself in New York is debating that.
There's going to be some lawsuits and stuff to try to make that. I mean, it already happened, but they threw the lawsuit out, or it ended, right?
Um,
Or is it still
there
active?
are potentially steps to be taken if we could fund them, but you know what? Third parties don't tend to have dirty money.
Yeah. Oh well. Hey, let's just the ground up forces. Yeah, I get that. I'm sorry to hear that, man.
I
Um,
mean, you need to look at it to this point, right? In order to enforce your own rights in any court system, whether it's ballot access, family law, or civil court, if you don't have the money to do it, it's too bad. And that's not for the people by the people. That's for the people with money, for the people by the people with money, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I guess one of the last things I'm gonna ask before I kind of like ask the finishing questions are, I'm so excited to meet you more. Right? Yeah, I've seen you around. I'd like to shout out. I think on Clubhouse there's someone called Liberty Show or something like that. There's two lady hosts. I don't know if you know them. They reminded me of the campaign, so that's one of the reasons why we reached out to Tom Queter right here, running for Senate with the Libertarians. Now the thing is that I also have a new site that we started with my man Mark Zafman called deafblindinclusion.com, and we're trying to put up some different resources to help people understand how to make their events more accessible, things like that. I know it might not be, completely in your realm because deafblind is not, but still in terms of accessibility, I'd like to have some
I'm
resources.
pretty familiar with it.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I work with a friend of mine who's blind from diabetes up the road. Um, I've worked with people who suffering from being deaf before. I am half deaf. I lost a hearing in my left ear from a skull fracture.
Oh,
Now, it's interesting because as a disabilities advocate, I have witnessed the deaf fighting the blind over the different amounts of welfare they get.
I see. Sometimes it does happen, yeah. But in terms
Um,
of making, we're trying to get some resources together to try to help other campaigns know how to make the websites more accessible, their events, stuff, all that like that, and just be a good resource for those things. Or maybe you could refer me to some other ones. Um, and I look forward to working with you on that particular angle. Are there any particular, besides the disabilities, which I know you've been working on for a long time, are there any other particular areas of expertise or that you want to talk about related to the campaign? I saw this up on crypto, by the way. I encourage everyone to check out your site. I'm gonna actually shut down before we go. But yeah, are there any particular issues that you're particularly passionate about?
Agriculture and the
Let's talk
economy.
about that. Okay.
Uh,
What
um,
about agriculture? Oh
well,
no. Okay. Let me just shut that down. Okay. Wow, I'm just sharing my whole everything with the whole world. Okay, let me just get that off the screen. Okay, I'm gonna go to all this stuff. Okay, I'm gonna go. Your website's what?
thomasquater.us.
Okay. So, oh, okay. Ooh, thomasqueter.us. THON. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Just changing the spelling. So you said you're also passionate about what particular issue?
Agriculture and our economy because it's pertinent to the area of New York that I live in.
Oh, I give away free plants every 7th of the month. I think you
Kind
know
of
kind of
plants.
I think you know what kind of plants I'm giving away. You know what I mean? If you got an event coming up, I'll be glad to come out there and give away some plants for real.
Right
And
on.
you could yeah make it extra hot. I'll give away 7 plants. No, 6 plants. That's legal, right? 6 plants. Yeah, I'll bring 6 little plants. And
Well, if you
so tell me
bring
about your
someone with
agriculture.
you,
Yeah.
if you bring someone with you, that's 12.
Well, there we go. Yeah. Well, it could happen. Yeah. So what's the I'm a sativa specialist, but I like to have energy. But what do you yeah, so yeah, what about the agriculture? I'm very interested. I have worms and stuff. Tell me about this. I love agriculture and also like food, right? So what is this about? What do you do in
So I,
agriculture?
I actually also have vermiculture worms, red regulars.
Nice. So
I
tell
was just
so tell
looking
me about
at
your
them.
agriculture work. I actually work with gardening groups, stuff like that. Let's talk. What's up? What do you do in the agriculture field?
Well, so I grew up poor in an agricultural area. And when you wanted food, you had to grow it or raise it or hunt it or forage it. It's a huge part of agriculture. You're probably very well aware that there's a big farm to table movement going on in restaurants and has been for some years. 2020 kind of, right, hurt it. Um, now, the federal regulations on food safety overlap with the state regulations on food safety and overlap with county and health department regulations on food safety and overlaps with the food safety regulations on restaurants as well as farmers. It's all overlap. We're over regulating. We're doing the same regulation at 17 different points or however many different points it is. And that all costs money and hinders business. Now, here's the thing. As far as federal regulation goes, states like New York in particular should be able to rebel against it without any problem. We have enough electoral votes that they don't want to mess with us. Neither party will want to mess with us. Same as California, Texas, Florida, they can all do this. In 2020, I witnessed a very specific problem. People don't realize, I don't mean to offend people who eat meat, but this is an industry that exists. I eat meat. When you transport animals, it stresses them out. That dwindles the quality of the meat, arguably releases stress hormones that are bad for you because you absorb them and it affects you negatively. It's torturous to the animal to travel long distances like that. And we have all kinds of regulations to prevent the farmer from butchering his own meat and selling it. You can go to a local butcher that's not USDA approved, have it butchered, and take it home and eat it. But you cannot take it home and sell it. Now, here's the thing, nobody ever gets sick from these butchers. So why do you need the USDA regulation? The FDA tells us that Pop-Tarts are healthier than avocados, has an allowable amount of both people and fecal matter in your food. This is ridiculous because the kind of food production that I'm familiar with, there's no people in it. And, certainly no significant amounts of fecal matter. But, it's actually one of the reasons why places like fast food restaurants overcook the beef. It's because that allows them to use a lower grade of beef. If you cook it, it's less likely to make you sick. So what's the solution here? The solution is to replace everything with an encompassing and wise system of regulation, if you need one, right? But I personally think that in time, if we can step down, free markets will figure that out. But I don't want everybody to think that I'm just going to turn everything into a free market instantly and trust everything all at once. That's not really a good step. See, we libertarians, we have a problem. We preach utopia in our own minds. We don't preach practical steps enough. That's what I try to do. It's what Larry Sharp tries to do.
I love that because I'm all about real solutions, for real, man. I love that, yeah? Just so you know, one thing I have with my weed network, the reason why we're giving away plants is we're trying to make them into partners, not into customers. And honestly, if there's someone out there who, I've eaten people that harvest their own meat. I have a lot of people that are raising chickens. I'll trade you bud for chickens. I'll trade you for the meat. And if you can't sell on the market, we don't have to rely on somebody in between us. I don't have to buy your chicken from Whole Foods. I could just get it from you directly. There's no reason.
Agorism.
Yeah. I'm all for it, man.
Yep. Find a way around. I live in a small rural community. That's already a thing. If I have too many tomatoes and my neighbor has too many cucumbers, guess what happens? We don't arrange a deal. We don't buy and sell with each other. We trade or just give them to each other.
If I get a good harvest for my stuff, I'm gonna send it up to you guys. Maybe you guys send us some stuff down here. We'll have a little banquet and we'll introduce people to your stuff, introduce people to my stuff, and we could get some trade going.
So back to agriculture real quick.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
What removing those regulations or mitigating those regulations could do is allow farmers upstate to make more money on a product that restaurants downstate want, and the restaurants downstate can get it at a better price. That means everybody involved, except the government, makes more money.
Down to find a way to work together. That's dope, man. Which
as far as cannabis goes, you're in New York City. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I'm in New York City, but I'm from upstate. I'm from a place originally called Batavia. You know where that is? Between Buffalo and Rochester.
Yep.
Yes, I'm originally from there. Lockport. Binghamton's a little bit further away, but I think our school did compete against them in some events.
So, what are you doing in December?
Well, once the election's over, I guess hanging out with you. What's up, man? What's going on?
Well, I'm planning Canna Giving.
Oh, snap. Okay, what's this about?
You know what Thanksgiving is?
Oh, okay, cool.
Imagine all
December?
those foods. I do it 2 weeks after to not interfere with people's family holidays.
Okay.
But imagine all of the food at Thanksgiving, including the cranberry sauce, infused with cannabis.
I'm going to have my crops ready to go. I'll also be giving away flour too, man. My stuff will be harvested at that time. That's perfect timing.
Same.
Nice. That sounds great, man.
I've been using cannabis for 26 years.
So where's this event going to be?
My house.
Where is that?
Mount Upton, New York. I'm not inviting
I know where
everybody
that is.
watching.
Okay.
It's good for about maybe up to a dozen people. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe we find a local hall and we have the Libertarians. You know what I mean? Hopefully it's a victory party. All right, we'll see. Yeah. It's
We'll
kind of a
see.
stretch, but it's great to bring up issues, and I'm glad to be part of a ongoing. I have a feeling that you ran before, and the city council ones are coming up. You're getting practice right now. You could win. I like your style. I'll provide some backing. I'm ready to go, man. I like this. You know what I mean?
I appreciate it. I'd like to leave your audience with one last message. So, the best thing that came out of my campaigns is inspiring others to run for office. There are at least 5 people who ran for office, whether libertarian or not, because of me in 2020. A elderly woman who's disabled ran for sheriff in my county because I stepped up and ran for Senate.
It's cool.
And we need to do that. You need to put yourself out there. You need to forget politics is dehumanizing, right? You're either worshipped or you're despised, and both of those dehumanize you. But we have to shed our fear. We have to realize that it's okay to be criticized, and we have to understand that when people disagree with us, it doesn't mean we're bad people, and it doesn't mean they're bad people. We need to leave those severe feelings out of it. I mean, I traveled over and over again with broken bones. I took death threats. I was almost killed once at a protest in 2020. Um, but good, right? Because that means somebody's stepping up, somebody's getting out there, and you can do it too. Anybody can do it. Uh,
Hey, you
whether or
have a
not you
good
be,
yeah. You have a good team
whether,
behind you. I'm looking at your website right now. I'm actually going to throw that on the screen. Actually, no, I'll hit it on. No, let me just throw that on my screen. Actually, you won't be able to see it, but I'm showing your website right now. thomaskleider.us. All the links here, by the way. There's plenty of other candidates. When I click on their Facebook link, it does not go to the actual Facebook page, but you have that all set. I'm showing them right now. So now I'm going back to your web page right here. I could share it with you on the screen, I guess. This is pretty dope, man. I just want to show my audience how they can get in contact with you. Once again, it's thomasqueeter.us. Yeah, let me share the screen. Is there anything that you got coming up now that people know how to get to your website? I think they can volunteer here, right? Probably, right? You guys need to buy advertising these last days. So I guess there's donation link or something. Where's that at?
there
The
is a
store.
donation link in the upper right corner. It's
Oh, I see
yellow.
that. Okay, so it's blocked up by our cameras right now. You could get a mug, you could get a button, you could get that shirt's pretty cool, man. I like the dark shirt. It's kind of classy, you know what I mean? Yeah. Get a hat, you could
Standard.
get a sweatshirt. It's getting cold, right? That's cool. I like
Yeah.
that, yeah. So what's besides the right anything coming up before the for the before the election? What do you got any events coming up?
I intend to do whatever it takes as much as I'm able. I'll be honest with you. Without a ballot line, it's hard to raise money.
Yeah.
And one thing that I did get support for was going to LibertyCon 2022, which I just got back from. Actually, I was on the road there when you called me the first time. And that's important because it brings more awareness, more knowledge of what we're doing to more different people. And here's one thing I learned that a lot of people don't realize. All over the earth, there are libertarians and libertarian movements. Every country, Australia, China, the UK, South America, all over the place. And it's interesting because this was an international event. Wherever you see the most oppression, you see the most growth in whatever is a libertarian or libertarian-esque movement. The more people hurt, the more freedom they seek.
Yeah, they don't believe in the system. It's oppressing them, man. You know what I mean? Your website is dope, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. That's a
Well,
powerful way to end
shout out to Brianna Coyle.
Who did your website? It's so pro, man. You got a good team behind you.
That is all her.
Word up. Nice job. Yeah. Very professional done. I like that. Yeah. All right, man. I'll